And welcome to Pique My Interest, a podcast dedicated to creativity. My name is Scoob Decker, and I am an artist, and your host. Pique My Interest is an exploration in meeting some incredible artists, learning about their craft, and exploring what makes them create. Hailing from the Galapagos Islands, the Phantastic is a character that we all know and love. His antics on the field and the connection to the community are silly and heartwarming. Tom Burgoyne is the master behind all of the Philly Phanatic's antics and lifestyle. Advertised as the best friend of the Phanatic, Tom uses his creativity with the big green hairy creature by coaching, teaching, and choreographing with the mascot, making him iconic. Because of their long history, their craft has been widely accepted as absolute fun, whether the team is winning or losing. Tom and the Phantastic want you to have a blast while you're at the park. I was able to sit down with Tom and dive into building a character and how to work with the crowd, as he constantly is inspired by the people of Philly, giving him the energy to create. He mentions it's hard to have a bad day when people are loving you, and let me tell you, the Phantastic and Tom have been the loving heartbeat for Philadelphia for over 37 years. But also, in this episode, Tom reveals a secret. This episode was recorded on December 2nd in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I hope you look up their work and your interest is piqued. I hope you're having a grand day, and please enjoy this week's episode I've titled Phantastic. Hello, and welcome to Pique My Interest. I am currently in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, sitting in Citizens Bank Park with this incredible artist. How are you doing today?
Incredible artist. Ooh, I think that's the first time I've ever been introed that way. I like it. I can get used to this.
Fantastic. Have you done anything interesting lately?
Anything interesting? Just about every day is pretty interesting, actually.
And let's get into it. Please, pique our interest. Tell us about you. What is your name and where are you from?
So my name is Tom Burgoyne. I am from originally Jenkintown, Pennsylvania, so the suburbs of Philadelphia. Grew up a huge Philadelphia sports fan. Grew up a huge class clown. Mm-hmm. So when you put those two together, it certainly has the makings of a mascot, a Philadelphia mascot. So currently, I work for the Phillies, and I am the best friend of the Philly Phantastic.
The best friend of the entertainer of millions a year, arguably the most recognizable character in sports, the perfect balance of artistic creativity and connecting through entertainment. He is the heartbeat of Philadelphia. We're here to talk about the Philadelphia Phantastic. Thank you for being here, and just tell us, what do you do with the Phantastic?
Yeah, well, I'm his best friend. I'm his agent, his dance instructor, I'm his chef. I tuck him in at night after a tough game, wherever the Phantastic goes, I go. We're very close.
And what's so special about the Phantastic than other mascots?
Well, let's see. The Phantastic's been around for a long time, too. So, really, he came to Philadelphia from the Galapagos Islands, of all places, where Charles Darwin came up with all his theories of evolution and, home of a lot of crazy-looking animals. The Phantastic fit right in, came to Philadelphia, loved Philadelphia from the very beginning, loved the Phillies, loved baseball, and he's been doing it ever since. So I think that's one of the reasons why the Phantastic has gained popularity. He's been doing it for a long time, so that's been 47 years. And yeah, he's, the popularity, Philadelphia fans grew to love him right from the beginning. Slapstick humor and dancing and music and irreverence, but also family entertainment kind of all rolled into one. I think it just had an appeal right from the beginning. And it's just blossomed and gotten bigger and bigger and more popular, it seems like, ever since.
Yeah, I love the Phantastic. He's this pear-shaped, green-furred, large-snouted, duck-butt, green, furry, fun creature that we all can just know and love. As soon as you get to the ballpark, you can pick him out in the crowd, and you're just drawn to him. But let's talk a little bit about you. What's your background, and did you have any education working with mascots?
Yeah, let's see. So I grew up, like I said, outside of Philly. Went to when I went to high school, I was our high school mascot, and again, I really was a class clown, all growing up. And then when it came to senior year at St. Joe's Prep, so a lot of people are familiar with St. Joe's University. They have a hawk mascot as well, and that hawk has to flap his wings, wherever he goes. He can't stop flapping his wings. I didn't have to do that in high school. I was a hawk. The costume was new. Instead of getting the hand-me-down from the college, which is a brown feathery thing, this thing looked more like a chicken, was a little bit more comical looking. So being a fan of the Phanatic, I kind of patterned my act, on the Philly Phanatic, kind of just a, more of a clown than flapping the wings and not really doing much of anything. So that's where I really got the taste of the mascot life. I went to Drexel University. They have a dragon, however, I wasn't the mascot there. I was not a dragon. I was not Puff. I was not, I think his name's Mario. I was not Mario the dragon. And then I graduated from college and I took a job in sales. Did that for about 6 months. I was selling computer forms and business supplies and not doing a very good job of it, because within about 6 months I was looking for a new job. And when I was looking through the newspaper, the one ads, I was looking under M for marketing or management, and then I saw M for mascots. And it was just a one-time ad that the Phillies had placed in the Philadelphia Inquirer, but it didn't say anything about the Phillies or the Phanatic. It just said mascots want it. I answered this ad just as maybe I'll be, the Grimace or the Hamburglar at a McDonald's or something and make a few extra bucks on the side. And so I sent in this resume and a letter, and 2 weeks later I got a call from the Phillies saying they were looking for a backup performer to the original Phanatic, someone who could handle a lot of the outside appearances. And so, that's how I found out about it. I had to come down, interview, audition, and got the job as the backup performer. Yeah.
So going back to your education a little bit, what piqued your interest about mascotting? What is it about covering your face, not being able to talk, but still being able to connect with an audience? What piqued your interest?
Yeah, I think that really did appeal to me. I mean, you really, and going back to this idea of being the class clown, it's like being the class clown on steroids, especially, in high school. Like I was in it, and I was still young and crazy, and in the character, I was really just being myself. But now 40 years later, it's kind of cool that I can kind of still be that class clown and really maybe because people can't see your face. You have that ability to just kind of really tap into, not worried about being embarrassed or anything like that. So you can really let it fly.
You can get lost in the character.
For sure.
Fantastic. Now, I'm just going to get into a little history of mascotting. It's pretty new in the whole world of art. There was an old pitcher in baseball called Max Patkin, who would kind of clown around and mimic.
Absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I really do believe he was the clown prince of baseball, and people haven't seen maybe Bull Durham. He made a cameo, but Max was actually from this area, and I got to know Max.
Oh, wow.
And, just a great guy, and he really respected, you would think, he would have been maybe a little bit more, not accepting of the mascot community, because, he really did start it without a costume, but a lot of the antics that you'd see, Max, was really the guy who started a lot of that.
The beginning steps of that animation.
No doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then, obviously, in San Diego, there was the chicken.
Yeah.
I was hired out by a radio station, and then through a couple lawsuits later, it just became the mascot that everybody knew and loved. And very soon later, a guy by the name of Dave Raymond started the Phanatic.
Yeah, well, so that's how it works. So in 1977, the Phillies were playing in San Diego. There was some of our executive people who were out there watching the game. They noticed the San Diego chicken, who, like you said, worked for a radio station. He was not with the Padres. He was just entertaining fans at the game between innings and through the crowd. And so when our front office people came back, they reported back to Bill Giles, who at the time was kind of our promotions and marketing guy, later to become the president of the Phillies. But he was the one who had the idea, hey, maybe the Phillies should, commission a mascot to be built. And so they called Jim Henson, of the Muppets, and Jim put us in touch with one of his puppeteers, Bonnie Erickson, and together they created the costume. And Dave Raymond, who at the time was an intern for the Phillies, was kind of a crazy class clown like myself. And so, yeah, Bill went to Dave to be the first performer, and Dave was a natural right from the beginning.
Yeah, I think that connection from the team to the city and the city to the team through just these simple acts of physical comedy and expression, it just forms this whole connection and this unity between that team and the
yeah, it's it's really interesting talking it in terms as being an art form. I've been doing this for so long. This is my 37th year, so you don't really think about it. This is kind of fun doing the podcast with you because you don't always kind of step back and think about, wow, what is it? Boy, is it an art form? I never considered. I thought it was just acting like an idiot, But I have heard it mention it is one of the original American art forms. And they say jazz, the jazz is an original American art form, and this version of putting on a costume and trying to convey and entertain without speaking and making people laugh, especially around sporting events, really is kind of an American art form. Yeah. So it's pretty cool to think of it that way.
That's fantastic. And I just want to know if you're ready, as the artist, to reveal the mask a little bit. Not only are you the best friend of the Phanatic, but...
Yes. Well, I think if your listeners haven't put it together yet, Well, and I said, a lot of the times, I know in the Philadelphia area, or, I do a lot of speaking engagements. I've written books. Like I said, I'm on the radio as they get interviewed or on TV, and I'm always, the best friend of the Phanatic, and that's always in quotes. And I'll go to a speaking engagement, and I could be talking to someone, and they're talking about how much they love the Philly Phanatic, and then when I'm the keynote speaker and I go up there, I always look down at that person. I'm like, you probably have a hard time with that whole Clark Kent is Superman thing too, right? Because, we're very, very close. So, fire away.
I just wanted to get that out because I do want to get into your creation process as an artist. How do you start your creation process? Do you, think about the audience, anything that's happening in the world, how can apply that to your craft that day? Or do you come with ideas of what to do that day? Or do you have a plethora of stock jokes that you can do?
Yeah, I mean, the Phanatic has, after all this time, again, 47 years, the Phanatic has a very defined personality now. And it's one that people have grown up with. And it's multi-generational. I get dads who are running after the Phanatic with their kids because that's what they did, when they were young. So they know the Phanatic's personality. He's at every game. They know some of the shtick, which kind of makes it cool too. They know when the Phanatic passes a bald guy in the stands, like that bald guy's probably going to get his head buffed, or he might steal, some nachos or somebody's girlfriend or a baby or sit on somebody's lap. So there are certain characteristics, certain bits that the Phanatic is known for, and I think that's the thread that people identify with.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool to be at a game, I think, and you say, you nudge your buddy, like, watch this, watch what he does here, because I know this is coming, so I think that creates a bond and a familiarity. And then, really as a team effort here with the Phillies, we've gotten more and more marketing and entertainment driven over the years in terms of just fun things that are happening at the ballpark that the Phanatic can kind of latch onto, So if it's Star Wars night, or if it's Latino Heritage Night, or fireworks, or 4th of July, or, there are all these type of things that will spark my creativity in terms of, how can the Phanatic kind of be part of that? And then I think this is the off season right now, and going into each season, I always try to add an extra few things that we can kind of add to the inventory. I call it inventory. The Phanatic is highlighted live during the game, twice a game, which is really great. It's kind of his the Phanatic has the end of the 5th inning where it's just his show, and the end of the 7th inning where he generally does a dance on the dugout. But that 5th inning in particular, anything can happen. It could be the Phanatic could dance with an umpire. He could have maybe a dance team come out and he'll dance with the dance team. He might shoot hot dogs. He might bring his inflatable characters that we created years ago out onto the field. So there is this kind of inventory I can pick from, and then going into every season, it's like, oh, if I can just add an extra couple things, it gives you the freedom to, kind of do whatever you want there.
Yeah, you're playing.
It really is play. That is for sure.
I love it. We're sitting in the Phanatic's dressing room right now, and I can see this plethora of costumes.
And toys, and yes.
And I assume you're probably not the one building these yourself.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
But coming up with these ideas to pitch to people, and this collaboration to bring the Phanatic to life. And we talked about you on the field being able to connect with the team. You have this connection with the players.
Yeah.
It makes this world relatable for the crowd, whether you're just dancing or shaking your booty around. It forms this artistic world, and I just want to say thank you for showing us that. But I just want to know, what gets those creative juices flowing? What inspires you?
Well, you mentioned the crowd. I mean, that's a big one. I mean, there aren't too many people who can entertain in front of 40,000 people a night, and have that spotlight on you, live at least 2 times on Fanavision where it's a big production, and then also just in the crowd to have fun with those fans. I'm one of those fans, and I think Phanatic represents those fans. He's got the same, he wears his heart out on his sleeves, little irreverent. He's a Philly sports guy, the Phanatic. But there's no question, I think I feed off of the crowd, and just just the fun of it, knowing that I kind of have creative license to do whatever I want. Can really jazz you up. People ask you, don't you ever have a bad day, and where you're dragging a little bit, and it really is magic when that Phanatic goes on. It's always a positive thing.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up, baseball is such an unpredictable sport. It can change at any moment, and you kind of have to be on at all times. When the Phillies are down 10-2, you got to be going.
Yeah.
If they're steamrolling the other team, if it's a tie game going into the 9th, it doesn't matter. You've got to be there. How much does your performance change during a game?
Yeah, it doesn't too much, because the Phanatic has that personality. I wrote a book called Feel the Love, How the Most Powerful Force in the Universe Builds Great Companies. And we came up with 7 different principles. Basically, the idea is, what company wouldn't want people to love them as much as they have for the Phanatic? And how does Phanatic create that love? Because there is a Phanatic frenzy when he's out at an appearance or at a game. It's crazy. You're wearing your Phanatic hat right
just
now.
For you, I did.
People wear their Phanatic gear and they shake, they cry, they hug the Phanatic. Tears sometimes when they meet the Phanatic for the first time. So it really is this crazy Phanatic frenzy. Well, it's like, what company wouldn't want that, right? Who doesn't want to be loved like that? And it's like, well, how does he do it? How does he create the love? And I think one of them is that whole idea. One of our principles is dance and be optimistic no matter what the score. And it's like the Phanatic, it's really cool for me in the 7th inning. Like I said, the Phanatic's always highlighted at the end of the 7th inning. And so when the Phanatic comes down the steps to get down to that dugout, you're right. We could be losing by 10 runs. It could be an September game and we're out of first place by 20 games and it's miserable. But when the Phanatic starts making his way down, I do feel that energy rise in the crowd, and I feel it because the Phanatic kind of creates that. Then he goes up, leads cheers, the inning ends. This is the Phanatic's big moment to maybe pull up Bruce Springsteen and Dancing in the Dark and bring Courtney Cox up onto the dugout, but no, pull a fan onto the dugout, dance, and everybody's having a good time. And then 2 minutes later, the Phanatic jumps off the dugout. He's gone, and the Phillies are still losing by 10 runs. But there was that moment where everybody was happy. So I think it really is a testament to that personality the Phanatic has, that people come to expect that he is going to be, kind of bring, positivity and that energy and that optimism. There's no doubt that part of the Phanatic's act, it's fueled by the fans.
Yeah, absolutely. You are 100% larger than life, and it just brings this, your eyes are drawn to you. And I think it's very evident. I have a couple pictures. I think Bryce Harper hits this moonshot home run, and all eyes are on the Phanatic.
Yeah,
they're dancing on the dugout.
It's funny. And listen, the costume is a great design too, because first of all, the color, that green does pop. So when everybody's wearing red in the crowd, the Phanatic pops. It's like that green really does. So yeah, your eyes are drawn to the Phanatic. And so as a performer, I think you're also thinking, well, all eyes are on me. So there's no let up. The Phanatic can't just stand around and do nothing. It's like you're always on, because people's eyes are drawn to that character. There's no doubt about it. And what you may be referring to is in the playoffs. Now, I always think, well, the Phanatic is just as big as the players, and people come to see the Phanatic. Well, that's not necessarily the case. And certainly in the playoffs, when things really, the focus is on the field and every pitch matters. And so it's interesting to go down into the crowd, and normally a Phanatic will get mobbed. But in the playoffs, everybody's standing and everybody's watching the game. And it's kind of like, hey, there's the Phanatic. Hey, Phanatic, hey, come on, yeah, why don't you sit over here? And literally the Phanatic will just stand during the playoffs, stand in the crowd, and just watch the game with everybody else.
Just becomes another one of the
And I always think it's funny, because sometimes in the background you can see that, like, you got all the, people's faces, and then there's the Phanatic just standing, a Phanatic's face, standing in the crowd watching the game. And then he can just react. So, yeah, when there's a big home run, it's just like, hey, he's going crazy, and he's hugging everybody, and, it's insane.
The impact of the Phanatic is just untouchable. Even Bryce Harper has Phanatic shoes, and they even have Phanatic bats, and they're shirts. You've got murals, you've got paintings. It's just what you've done for the city is just unbelievable.
It really is amazing when Bryce Harper started wearing Phanatic merchandise, what that did for the brand. I think it really was a shot in the arm for the Phanatic, just to have the best player in baseball, or one of them, being so into the Phanatic, telling everybody how much he loves the Phanatic, and you see it now. Because really, people are wearing the headbands that he started, the Phanatic headbands. We got those other dangle hat, those furry hats. People are just wearing Phanatic merchandise everywhere, and I think Bryce Harper was a big part of that.
Yeah. Feeding off the players and the crowd. You said sometimes it's hard. It might be hard, maybe not for you. You've been doing this for how long now?
Yeah, 37 years.
37 years you've been the Phanatic. I feel, as an artist, sometimes it's hard to come into work. You're just not feeling it. You're not having a great day. How do you overcome a creative block? How do you just get to there and just, I got to do it today?
Yeah, thankfully, I think, and you're probably the same way, you have a deep love for it, too. So that helps. You can't put that energy out there that we're talking about unless you really do love what you're doing, So that's just a huge piece of the puzzle. So, even if, I'm not really feeling it, and there have been times, physically, I've had some back issues over the year, and there literally have been times where I've had to have someone help me out of my chair after taking a break, help get the costume on. I'm almost like crippled, and I would start making my way to the elevator to take up to the concourse to get onto the concourse level, and by the time I'm on the concourse and being surrounded by all that love, that pain goes away. So that is just miraculous to me. I don't know how that happens. So again, I think that's the kind of energy that we're talking about. So it's very, very difficult to have a bad day when people are loving you as much as
it's hard to call it work when you're in love with it.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's for sure.
And then, do you have any hobbies? And do they complement or contradict your craft?
I'm not much of a hobby guy.
No?
I got to find a hobby. Someday I'm going to be, I won't be the best friend of the Phanatic anymore, and I'm going to have time on my hands. But, I have 3 boys, married with 3 boys, and, they were my hobby for sure for 25 plus years. So, love getting together with my family, and we go to sporting events, and so I'm working on a hobby. I play golf, but I'm terrible.
Has the Phanatic ever played golf?
He's terrible, too. The gut gets in the way. No doubt about it.
That's fantastic. And then just going a little further, would you recommend going to school or classes to build on mascotting? I'm just curious, what would be your advice to somebody trying to tell a story without being able to show their face or being able to speak a joke? do you advise going to school? Or is there even a mascot school?
Yeah, Dave Raymond, who was the original Phantastic, when he left the Phillies, he started his own mascot company, and he would have kind of boot training, boot camp training for mascots. And absolutely, and that world has blossomed a little bit. I think it's really neat because 35 plus years ago, I don't think kids saw it as a profession. It's like it wasn't like that because there weren't professional mascotting jobs out there. But now it has become cool to see kids who want to become mascots. And cheerleading too in college has really blossomed, high school and college. And they now have parts of the cheerleading competitions, which is now mascot competition, which is great. And I watch tapes of these guys, and there is improv and dance routines and things they have to put together. So there's no doubt that you can learn that. And also, how to create a character. Every character might have a different way he holds himself or a different walk, or you really kind of have to tap into, okay, who is this character? Who is he? What's he represent? Is he a fuzzy, friendly kind of mascot? He's a little tougher. Is he athletic? So I didn't have that luxury of kind of creating a character from scratch,
sure.
But it'd be pretty cool to do, I think, to be able to give a character life like that.
When creating a mascot, do you create your own, or do you find one that you're interested in and kind of learn those traits and kind of audition for that? Or do you pitch your own, kind of build your own?
I think reality is most of it is a lot of these characters are already set. Teams now have valued the mascot. Minor leagues for sure, or that are very promotional driven, have their characters now. So most of the time you're stepping into a character.
Yeah.
But I talk to high school kids. I get letters and calls from kids who are in high school who, hey, I want to be a mascot when I grow up. And the first thing I say is, well, does your school have a mascot? A lot of times they don't. Or maybe an elementary school, like a lot of elementary, most high schools do, or maybe they don't use it. It doesn't really have a personality yet. Mm-hmm. But elementary schools, I'll tell a 5th or 6th grader, like, hey, maybe you can create your own characters. So that does happen, and I think it's a great exercise for people who want to get into the business.
Fantastic. And just a little bit more advice. I know this is the city of brotherly love, but it's also a city that gets pretty harsh sometimes. How do you handle criticism? Do you ever get anybody just going like, what are you doing? Get out of my way. I'm trying to watch the game.
Yeah, you would think. I've tried to tally up the numbers, like in terms of, I know the Phanatic, I know for me, at one point I tallied up just the number of people I've performed live in front of at Phillies games, and the number was over 65 or 70 million people over the last 35 years. Now that's just Phillies games. So then you add in all the hundreds of appearances we do a year and all the interactions we have with people. And it's so rare. It's almost like, in all those years of doing it, I really have a hard time coming up with 5 examples, like counting on my hand, like people who really had a problem with it. I think a big part of that is you do, as a performer, get a sense on who you can mess around with and who you want to maybe avoid. That is, I guess, if we're talking about an art form, that is really, I think, over time you really develop this immediate, quick sense of, you see somebody and it can be a split second of, oh, this is somebody I can play with or somebody I should move on from. It could just be that quick second of somebody smiling at you, or just their body posture. If you see them tense, you have to approach them a different way, or just pass by, or if they're smiling, it's like, oh, they're putting out a vibe, oh, I can have some fun with this person.
Yeah.
So I guess because you have that spidey sense, and you never want to be antagonistic,
right,
and argumentative or in somebody's face who doesn't want it. There just really hasn't been many times that's happened.
Well, it's hard. It's just full of love.
And I think the Phanatic has it better maybe than some newer mascots that have just arrived on the scene, in that he's got a certain stature too that I think people respect. It's like, oh, that's the Phanatic. Okay, we won't mess with him too much, because there are times a mascot can be a punching bag. No doubt, especially for little kids pulling the tail and But
he's a miracle of a bunch of tatted out dudes giving you hugs, as well as the kids who are just using you as a role model because they just look up to you.
Tatted out dude. I remember one time, it happens all the time, but one in particular, because when we were writing this book, Field of Love, I remember I hear it in the stands, "Hey, Phanatic, show me some love." And I remember this because I remember thinking, wow, that's funny, because I'm in the middle of this book, so it's just love, 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 love. And I hear, "Show me some love." I turn around, and there is a tatted up guy. He looked like a guy just walked off the set of Animal House, basically. And he's up in the steps, like with his arms out, like, "Hey, Phanatic, show me some love." So the Phanatic goes up the steps, and that's the other thing. You do, as an art form, I guess, you really have to size people up to decide what you want to do with them. And in that split second, I noticed that the guy's shirt is not tucked in, which is key. He does not have a beer in his hand, because you think, okay, this guy might, but he doesn't have a beer in his hand, so that's key. So now I know, and he's got his arms out already. So when I go up to the guy, instead of hugging him, I grab the bottom of his shirt, put it right over his head, and in one fell swoop, now the guy is bare-chested and smiling, and the Phanatic throws his shirt into like the section, into the stands, and then we're hugging it out, like we're long lost brothers, So, but again, that's reading somebody and kind of noticing and seeing how to react.
Just a part of the craft.
Wow. That's it.
Wonderful. And now I think it's time to clear the air. Are there any misconceptions about your craft?
Well, let's see, misconception. I know people, that's the first question I get usually is, does it get hot in there? So I don't think that's a misconception. It gets very hot. So you do have to deal with the heat. I know the way the Phanatic does it is we're in his Phanatic dressing room. So the Phanatic is out before the game and then comes back and takes a break. And then he goes out in the crowd and he comes back, takes a break. He gets ready for that fifth inning routine and then takes a break. So I think that's one thing that you really do have to have the energy every time you're out there. So, and in order to do that, you can't be out there for an hour at a time or 2 hours at a time. So I think that's a big part of it. Yeah, so I think most people just kind of see the character out there. They don't think of everything that goes on behind the scenes to kind of entertain.
How heavy is the suit?
So it's about 35 pounds.
Wow. So you got to have some form of athleticism to do this as well.
Yeah, or stupidity. That always helps. A certain level of stupidity. It is hot, and it is bulky, and so it's kind of like, if you do it long enough, it's like putting an old pair of slippers on, that's comfortable and you can move in it. But I think most people don't realize what that takes to be able to move and get through a crowd and
not be able to see them,
balance on chairs and limited vision. I think that's, again, it's kind of easy now, but when you're first starting out, it's like, I'm bonking into people. The Phanatic has that big snout, so he might take out a few people. When he goes to give you the big kiss, he might knock you in the head, or I guess it's those little things. It's not quite as easy as it looks.
Yeah. And what's next for the world of your craft? I know you've written a few books that deal with the Phanatic and your mascotting. Are we going to start to see more mascots? Are we going to start to see less mascots?
Yeah, well, that's interesting you say that, because we just did unveil last year a little mini Phanatic. Now, we tried this about 24 years ago, because it was the year 2000. I remember that. We had a mini Phanatic. His name was Fred, visited from the Galapagos Islands. It was the Phanatic's cousin. And Fred lasted for about 2 years. I wasn't a big fan of how the costume looked. And it never really took off. So we kind of shelved Fred after 2 years. But then what we started seeing, especially recently over the last, or really since 2008 when the Phillies won the World Series, that every once in a while in the crowd you'd see a homemade Philly Phanatic costume. Somebody who, mom made a costume for their kid. Mm-hmm. And every time we'd see that, it's like I'd get my assistant and tell her, hey, you got to go over and, hey, let's see if we can get that little mini Phanatic on the dugout. And that always goes over big. So we said, you know what, let's have our own mini Phanatic made. And it'll look a little bit more, not so professional looking, a little bit more homemade where you can see the little kid's face. It's just very cute. So we introduced him last year. I know I mentioned the Galapagos gang. They've been around for, I think, almost 10 years now. They're inflatable characters. Right now, looking to maybe introduce some dancers that might join the Phanatic a little bit in 2025, who would be, here most games and join in skits, but also maybe get the crowd pumped up a little bit. Yeah. So develop a little bit of a dance crew.
And what's next for you personally? What's next for Tom?
Well, let's see. I'd like to be able to, maybe before I stop doing this, is to write another book. Lessons I've learned from the Phanatic. And hopefully really kind of pass the torch too, because I think I've just been so fortunate many years ago to step into those big shoes, and I think the goal is to keep the Phanatic rolling, till forever. Yeah. And so just when it is time for me to kind of be the second best friend, maybe not the Phanatic's best friend, I hope that transition goes well and hope to make that happen.
Well, to whoever that is, they are big shoes. I'm looking at them. They are literally very big shoes. And I do just want to brush up. I kind of skipped this question, but you brought up 2008 and also bring up 2023. National League World Series. To me, that's success. You are the mascot of these championship-winning teams. Do you feel successful? And what really makes you feel like you're succeeding in mascotting?
No doubt I feel successful. And it's I just feel so blessed and so happy and so lucky. Just because, as a kid, I was the biggest Philadelphia sports fan in the world, and here I am, not only working for the Phillies, but kind of representing the Phillies the way I do as, this character. So that part of it is just, I think the definition of successful too is terms of just, are you happy what you're doing? Do you love what you're doing? I don't deserve people telling me they love me every day. They love the Phanatic, but it is funny when I'm out in public and somebody finds out, what I do. Could be a waitress at a restaurant, or, the first words out of their mouth is, I love you. And so it's like, wow, okay. It just, so yeah, I really feel successful and blessed for sure. Yeah.
I mean, I could tell you the success comes from you and the Phanatic sharing a locker room in Citizens Bank Park, as well as people telling you that they love you. Because I can say that it's true. They've fallen in love with you, what you do for the city, what you do for the sport of baseball, what you do for art. I just want to thank you. I can't thank you enough for joining me and piquing my interest. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we wrap up?
No, the Phanatic's going to keep doing what he's doing. I did mention I do a lot of public speaking, so you can catch me at tburgoyne08@gmail.com. The book is Feel the Love, How the Most Powerful Force in the Universe Builds Great Companies. And that's been a really great blessing, too, to be able to go out, tell my stories, and also kind of share this message of love, which I think is just universal. And, yeah, it's just been a great experience.
Yeah, and you can see Tom every home game at Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia. He'll be performing as the Phanatic. You also have 2 books out there.
Yeah, well, the Phanatic has just wrote my 21st book for children's books. So I have 21 children's books written, a literacy program that gets over 100,000 kids in the Philadelphia region reading every day. And then I have a couple books about the Phillies, and then the Feel the Love book, which is more of a leadership and customer service kind of a book.
Fantastic. And is the Phanatic on social media at all?
Yeah, let's see. So he's got his own Instagram account. So recommend that highly, at Philly Phanatic. And the Phillies do a great job, our social media team, and kind of getting the Phanatic out there. He has a Yule log video coming up. So, for those people who don't have a fireplace, you fire up your computer and you can watch the Phanatic sitting next to a fireplace. But usually mayhem ensues, and a lot of mayhem ensues in this year's Yule log, and I think that's coming out in a couple of weeks.
I think mayhem always follows the Phanatic. Well, again, just thank you. And I do like to end with one last question. If you could excel at any other craft, what would you want to do?
Wow. Play the piano.
Piano.
Yeah. We had a piano when our kids were born. We wound up buying a piano, and they had lessons and played a little bit when they were younger. And I would doodle a little bit. I was trying to teach myself, and I kind of, couldn't quite get there. And then we moved. We got rid of the piano. And it's like, I wish I had learned the piano.
Well, I can say it's one of my favorite instruments. My wife plays it, and she just...
Lizzie plays the piano?
Lizzie plays the piano.
She must be great at it.
She was actually my first guest on Pique My Interest.
Oh, there you go.
But yeah, I love the piano, and who knows, maybe we'll see the Phantastic in some tale sitting down at the piano one day.
Well, there's the Phantastic's one-man band. We had the movie poster hanging up in the dressing room, and I think you can go to YouTube, and I think all our movies are on YouTube now, but the Philly Phantastic's one-man band, and we did a book on that too. So the Phanatic was playing all kinds of instruments, and Phanatic's much more talented than I am. He can play the piano, I can't.
That's hilarious. Well, thank you so much, and thank you to all my peakers out there. Please let me know if you know of any special or unique artists or art forms you think I should explore. I'm currently in Philadelphia and can't wait to see where Pique My Interest takes me next. Remember, creativity comes from the heart. Push yourselves, be kind to each other. I'm Scoob Decker, and thank you for helping me pique my interest.